Hello everyone, my name is Marie Chandler. I have selected the topic of gun control for my speech. This has been a subject of debate for a very long period of time in the United States and other parts of the world, mainly because of ever increasing the death tolls ranging from guns. My point is that guns should be restricted. There are many ways and facts that virtue impossible to dispute that, but guns do kill. And that's what people need to understand. From incidents involving children toying with guns, to suicide, to cold-blooded murders involving criminals, death tolls involving guns is alarmingly high. The opposite point of view is that guns should be allowed because they're used for the right things, from protections to police force, for the military, and for individuals to protect their homes, their children, or themselves. The death tolls involving guns is alarmingly high, and that came from the Bloomberg article, right? Due to this regulation that restrict guns ownerships are required, and nations where gun ownerships are limited, significant drops in death tolls involving guns have been recorded since the introduction of law curbing gun ownership. In fact, there are many reasons why the implementation of gun control regulation is very highly imperative. So I'll be focusing on discussing issues of gun violence and demonstrate that its highly significant contribution to guns in America, and therefore gun violence laws should be there to control the numerous deaths that result to the crime. In fact, there are many reasons why implementation of gun regulation is highly imperative, like for instance, domestic violence. Um, At least 1 million women in the United States are assaulted physically by their romantic lovers annually. However, the issue domestic violence in the United States has been blamed to some extent on gun violence. The possible loopholes and gaps in those regulations is that the numerous problems faced by those implementations enforce the laws. Enforce stricter laws for domestic violence issues, not focus on just the guns itself, where the violence are left to expose vulnerability to that aspect of blaming the gun versus blaming the individual that's using the gun. According to various statistic studies, in the past 2 decades, more homicides of intimate partners in the United States were committed using guns, more than any other weapon. Now, do you blame the gun or do you blame the individual? I blame the individual holding the gun. The gun doesn't shoot itself. It takes that individual to get to a point where he or she holds that weapon, holds that gun and fires it. So to pose dangerous risk to those number of victims of domestic violence, we leave that exposed to where the first sign, hey, what do we do? We can't just automatically blame the gun. Um, but most states do not have appropriate mechanisms that would make sure that the domestic violence abusers that possess weapons to return them when they are forbidden from using them. So knowing that somebody has an aggressive past, it should come up with the background checks when they do get these weapons. Guns contribute to mass shootings established by various investigations that were done on gun safety. According to gun control statistics, 18% of mass shootings that were executed in the United States, the person responsible for the shootings had been initially charged with some form of domestic violence or some type of aggressive violence in nature that was overlooked when they went to go purchase this weapon. It is established that more than 57% of mass shootings that were reported between the periods of January 2009 up to the month of June 2014, the perpetrators were all aiming at killing family members or intimate partners during those killings. And that was from the New York Times, paragraph 6, 2014 edition. That increased number of mass shootings can attribute to the lack of regulation on restriction of gun ownership. We need to tighten up. I don't believe anybody, the same way we have to use an example, is getting a driver's license. You take your test, you take your written test, you take the driving test, and if you don't pass, you don't pass. And it should be some kind of restriction as well for gun control. Another point is several um, federal regulations and state regulations have interacted with the United States to keep guns off the shelves for most violent domestic offenders in the United States. But I'm pretty sure after a couple of years, um, once probation and all stuff is cleared up, they can be issued a gun. So similar to different states, well, federal regulations should change to enforce anyone with some type of domestic or some type of violence background should not get a gun permit. I don't believe that the ones who are doing the right thing should suffer for the ones that are not. They need to understand. They need to go through training and some kind of firing class, the same way when you do concealed carry, for them to understand that the gun is not a toy. It is not the first thing you pull out when you have some type of issue or dislike with another person. So, for inclusion, several more reasons further strengthen the majority of citizens to stand together and to enforce tougher gun measures. The general population reckons that with stricter gun laws, more lives can be saved. Past happenings should act as severe wake-up calls and convince the nation to come up with legislation that can curb gun issues and potentially save several lives.